when I sat with that feeling of like, okay, it's happening, I'm really quitting, it was just this kind of nagging feeling that kind of gone bigger and bigger as the days and weeks went on, of like, you're not done yet. Stop thinking that you're quitting. And it was just like, I need to try. I can't quit now.
Welcome to Mindset Wins, Saya Sakakibara. So excited to have you on the show. This whole story with you and the BMX bike started because from my research, it was not love at first sight, was it?
With me, with BMX, I think I've had a love-hate relationship as soon as I started racing. And there was a story where I went to the track for the first time, crashed 3 times on the first jump and cried and went home, didn't even touch my bike for 3 months. But what brought me back to BMX was my older brother, Kai, and he is a prominent part of every part of my BMX journey. And he was able to, like, his love for BMX, his love for riding bikes and everything about it. I just wanted a piece of that as well, I think, and I didn't want to miss out. I wanted to be the same as my brother. And so that's just what brought me back, I think. Like, even, I don't even remember doing that, but I believe that, looking up to him was such an integral part of my return to BMX racing when I was 4 years old. And yeah, it's just been something that my brother and I had always done, and it's something that, I don't know a life without BMX, because that's just for as long as I remember, I've been on a bike and at a BMX track and watching my brother ride and watching me ride. Everything was revolved around BMX.
Maybe you can explain for us or describe to us and the audience what it's like for you to be racing, after the first bumpy start, kind of, that didn't feel so good. Obviously, you, made your whole life about this now. What is it like to kick off a race like that?
It's interesting. It's just a journey. You when you're a kid, you just kind of do what's in front of you, and that was BMX. And that was the case for a very long time, up until I was, 18. And even before then, I've won multiple Australian national championships titles and world titles as an amateur or as a young girl. And I knew that I was good at BMX, but it wasn't something that I was fully passionate about. I wasn't thinking about BMX all the time. I was, while my brother cleaned his bike, I didn't clean my bike. And I was, considered, lazy compared to my brother, who was so eager to train. He started training at such a young age, and he kept a training diary from when he was 9 years old. And yeah, we still probably have that somewhere. And I know that I should do the training diary, but I never did it. And yeah, it was just this thing that I did. And that's just what I'd always known. That it's just, I do BMX with my brother. And he was the one who pushed me into training with him. And then when he finished high school, he went straight into professional BMX, following the world circuit, and that's exactly what I did after I finished high school. I didn't see any other option but to join him, and it was really fun. It was 2 years of traveling the world together, following the circuit, and it was a cool lifestyle.
What do you write into a training or a practice notebook? What goes in there? What are the things that you need to keep track of?
I think what was going in there when I did write it when I was a young girl is definitely much different to what it is now. But back then you were supposed to just talk about your training, how it felt, what you can do better, blah blah blah. But I think now I use a lot of the journaling to kind of process emotions of race day or race week. It kind of is like my sounding board, like my therapist kind of. I can just like write every thought in there, and then by the end of everything, I kind of then start writing like positive things about the situation. So, for example, if I was really freaking out about racing or something, I would write every reason why I am, and then by the end, I'll be like, "No, you can do this. You've got these things to focus on," and it just feels like magic, and you don't even think about doing it, but in the end it's just like you just resolve your own problem. And it's actually a really cool tool that I use, but I don't use it only when I'm freaking out. The principles are the same as when I was doing it when as a young girl. You write about what you did, how you felt, what you can do better next time.
So interesting. So you would like assess a race afterwards like this, going like, okay, so today I felt, I don't know, what are words they're using?
Used to kind of just like write each race. At the end of the day, I'll be like, this is how I woke up, and this is what I did in the first race. This happened. Second race, this happened, and it was just when I was just recording everything, and it was also another measure of, or another tool to be able to look back on. Like, for example, if it was a really good race, I want to look back on things that I was doing and what I was thinking and what the situation was like. Because you can't remember. Like, you can't remember how you were feeling a year ago. Even if it was a prominent time in your life, it's quite, sometimes I look back on, just read back on some races or diary entries, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't even remember that. And it's just, it reminds you that you have to record things. Like you have to capture, whether it's taking photos, taking videos, or writing things down. Like it reminds me that life goes by so fast, and we have to take the initiative to capture these moments, because we're just going to forget about them.
So for one, it's like an analysis of what you're doing, of what you're feeling, and being aware of all these things. And the other thing is what you just described. Why do you think it matters so much?
I think that this life of being a professional BMXer is something that not a lot of people can experience. And I feel very, very lucky that I can do this. And it's not something that's going to last forever. And I think it's important to capture those thoughts and feelings that I was feeling. I think it's quite cool to read back on when there's like a book about people's diary entries or something. It's quite interesting just to read their thoughts at the time, especially if they're going through a time that that happened, like an event, for example. And yeah, it's cool to look into people's minds and what they're thinking, and I think that's really interesting. And I know that in 20 years time I'll be very interested in what I was thinking at the time of
We might
April.
publish the diaries of Saya then. Can't wait,
No
can't
way.
wait for that book.
No, thank you. That's too much. Too many personal infos in there. Not gonna share. But that's the good thing about the journaling. Like, you have to write as if no one's gonna see it, and that's the way that you can process the information and the thoughts. If you're honest with yourself, that's when you can get the honest answers that you need, which I do draw upon and use a lot.
Maybe this is the right moment to elaborate a little bit more on your brother's crazy accident, because we just learned how close you guys were. You were basically best friends and tried to accomplish this amazing dream of becoming pro BMXers. And then in 2020, Kai crashed during a race and suffered this brain injury that kept him in a coma for 6 weeks. Maybe you can share with us what that meant for you, what you went through, and how you were able to deal with the situation as a family too.
It's an interesting question, because I feel like at every stage it has affected me in very different ways. So he was in a coma for about six weeks, and in the early days it was a touch and go situation. The doctors did their best with, you know, controlling the situation medically, but it was kind of up to it was out of their hands of whether he was going to wake up, whether how is he going to wake up, is he going to be able to talk, and there was like no answers. And it was a day by day situation of like his progress. So when I look, even when I think back at those times, I think about how did I even get through this? And it was definitely a horrific time because, you know, you don't have any answers. It's like an unbelievable thing that you don't think that it would ever happen to you. And it was just all a bit, it was just it was unreal, like surreal. But we were just thrown into this situation. My parents and I were just at the hospital day by day, and he's like, oh, this number has to go down in order to be healthy. And he's like, oh, he has pneumonia. It was just chaotic. But then one day at a time, it was just like a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And then once he moved into the rehab facility, that was another step to just keep going. And now 4 years on, he's walking, he's talking, he's moved out of home, he's in a new sport, he's doing a lot of public speaking, he has a lot of friends. Like, it's incredible. It's a testament to just the way that he is as a person, his mindset, his drive. He's willing never to like give up. It was just like never a question of I don't want to do this anymore. It was just keep going. And that's why he was able to be the way he's now. And for me, I think his injury has impacted me in different ways at different times, like I mentioned. And I feel like the way that it hit me the most was after the 2021 Olympics. Because up until then, I just had this goal of getting to the Olympics for both Kai and I, because that's what we dreamt of together. So for the first year and a half or something, I was just in this kind of adrenaline mode of just going through the training. I wasn't even scared of crashing. I was just so motivated to just get there, and I don't think I had the time to process anything. And it was just after that, everything like kind of came crashing down, and I realized what I had really lost. And that was, you know, my best friend, my teammate, my travel buddy. He was a mentor for me, and he was BMX. And it took me a really long time for me to realize that he was a huge part of this thing that is BMX. And then I was missing it, and then I was just running this BMX machine with the main component missing. And you could just see it in my riding. I was fearful, I was crashing, and it was just a bit of a mess. And yeah, it was definitely hit me literally like 2 years after, where it all caught up to me, which was yeah, really hard. And it made me really realize like what is BMX without Kai. Like, I've been just doing it because of him. So if he's not doing it, then why am I doing it?
What was your answer?
My answer was to quit. My answer was like, well, there is no reason. And do I even love it? It was just this crazy questioning myself and why. And it was, yeah, in the end, I was like, yeah, it's not worth it. And that was that time. After my 5th concussion, I went through this rehab at the Swiss Concussion Center, which they were awesome, but I'm like, I don't want to do this. I was alone. And when you have a concussion as well, it's not any other injury. It just makes you think differently. It changes you, and it makes you really think of how fragile human like we are.
That's the concussion you're specifically speaking about at the 2021 Olympics in Tokyo. You said after physically you were fine. There was nothing wrong with the body, basically.
Yeah.
It was just this severe injury in your head.
Yeah.
What does it feel like?
The awful thing was the concussion I'm talking about was the one 11 months after the one in Tokyo. So I went through in 2021 after the Olympics, I went through, like 3 months really experiencing for the first time what, prolonged concussion symptoms can be like, and the concussion syndrome, which I never experienced before in my life until then, which wasn't a fun experience. And then in 2022, I had another crash, had another concussion, and knowing what I went through only 11 months before, I was really not wanting to go through that again. And it's just always in the beginning, it's just like headaches and feeling fatigued, confused sometimes. And you just always have a feeling of not feeling right, like especially with athletes, I think, like we are very in tune with our health, our bodies, how it's supposed to feel. And when that, it's just like an unexplained feeling of like, this doesn't feel right. And it's just so frustrating because you can't see it. You can't really explain it to other people. No one can help you. And I think for me, concussions affect people very differently. A lot of people go through bouts of anxiety and depression as well, which would be incredibly tough and difficult. I was lucky not to have those severe symptoms, but it was not feeling right. That symptom and knowing that I'm not okay, not knowing how to deal with it, feeling alone, everything like that contributes to feeling, those feelings of sadness, which, it's just not fun, and you can't do anything about it. Except when I went to the Swiss Concussion Center, which is when they were able to do tests that actually showed, tangible data to show that these bits are not working well.
That's what I was just thinking the entire time. It's so untangible, right? It's just this vague situation. It must be crazy.
It was just like this light at the end of the tunnel. It was like, okay, these are the things that are wrong. These are the exercises we're going to do. And I followed those exercises like to the T. I was like, I'm getting this fixed. And luckily, after the end of I was there for about 3 or 4 weeks. And after that, I was much, much better. I was in a better spot. That was great. I felt much better. I didn't have any symptoms anymore. But then it was another process of coming back from an injury. It's the second part of any injury, really, which could be like the hardest part of trusting yourself again, building up the courage to line up against the other girls up an 8-meter hill. And that was probably the part that took the longest and was the hardest part.
So how did you rebuild your relationship with BMX? Because luckily for everyone, for every fan, you are back and you did make your way back into the sport.
In order to get to lining up against 7 other girls on the start hill, I took some time away. So it was a year between my last World Cup where I crashed to my next one in 2023. the first bit was recovering physically from the concussion, which took a couple months or so. And then I decided not to race for the rest of the season. Then I decided not to race at all forever.
But something happened.
Yeah, I guess it was something that I decided when I was going through that rehab thing in Switzerland. But as I started to tell more people in my family, my manager, when I sat with that feeling of like, okay, it's happening, I'm really quitting, it was just this kind of nagging feeling that kind of gone bigger and bigger as the days and weeks went on of like this, you're not done yet. Stop thinking that you're quitting. And it was just like, I need to try. I can't quit now. I can't, this is not the right decision, because up until this point, like, I have done well. I've been, you know, World Cup podiums, and at the Olympics before I crashed, I was doing really well and I was showing good potential, and I would be kicking myself if I didn't give it another go. And I couldn't allow myself to be defeated by this fear. I didn't want to be defeated by this fear. So I was like, well, I'm going to give it another go. Another year, and this time I'm going to do it, every single thing, the way that I want. And yeah, so every decision that I made for the 2023 season was purely for me. And I think that it was the huge part of the process of rebuilding a BMX that is me, and then not BMX that is me and Kai, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you defined yourself as a team. You didn't race alone.
Yeah, a big part of it was the team. I needed to rebuild the people in my team, not Kai and I's team. As much as I wanted Kai to be there in the journey with me, he was on a different path. So I couldn't just keep living this lie of like, yeah, he's with me.
It's kind of like growing up, too.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? You can't just always be in the same processes and systems. Like, you just have to change at some point. So I think I just started making changes, and just somewhere silly, I tried doing something and it didn't work, and I was like, fine, I tried something else and that worked and it was great. And it was just like things like changing my bike, changing my helmet, changing my pants. I don't know, just the brands that I like wanted to work with. I also stopped working with bike brand and like bought my own bike that I wanted to ride. And it was just like an investment to myself by buying that bike and spending my own money. And I think that was also empowering to be like, I believe in myself to get back out there and this is what I need to do. So that was a huge process. And a year after, so literally, I crashed in June 2022. And then in June 2023 was the first World Cup of the season. And the first day, so there's 2 rounds of it on each weekend. And the first day I got out in semi-finals, and I remember texting my coach and I was like, is it bad that I'm really happy that I didn't make it to the finals? And then he's like, kinda. Because I was also still working through that fear component. And I was like, well, if I didn't make it to the final, then that means like one less race that I have to race and putting myself in danger of crashing again. So it was just like weird, like pulling and tugging of, yes, I want to do this, but like, oh, I'm too scared. But then the day 2 was a little bit better. I got 5th, which was fine. And then the 3rd round was a few weeks later, and I won that. It was so crazy to me because it was at a race in Netherlands. It's at a track called Papendal, and it's it's been a consistent stop in the World Cup circuit for a really, really long time. And I watched many races there as a young girl. And when I won there, I just couldn't believe it. And that was where I crashed the year before as well. And I was like, through all this, I didn't want to do this. I'm at a track where I crashed and I had probably the worst day of my life, and I came back to win the race. It was a huge outpour of emotions. The biggest bit of evidence that I could now obtain and look back on to say I've done this and I can trust myself, and this is a huge achievement. And that was just the start to the rest of a great season.
You started this whole statement out with, I started to change silly things like my helmet or my pants, or bought my own bike. That's creating a habit of believing in your own decisions, don't you think?
I feel like every decision you make for you is a piece of evidence that you can like trust yourself. Like if you're doing something for yourself, you made the decision to do it. You did it. So you can just be like, yes. I wanted to take control of the BMX situation. I wanted to take control because in BMX, up until I made those changes, I thought of how unpredictable BMX is as a sport and how many things are outside your control. And in life, I feel like when you feel like everything's out of your control, that's when you start to stress, right?
Definitely.
So I think it was taking back the control of what I can. And that was, it was just learning that I can control my feelings. I can control my thoughts. I can control what I do, my behaviors, how I race, how I ride, what I eat, how I train, how I sleep.
So you found a way to flip the switch, really. And if I'm not mistaken here, until today, you say the fear is something that actually never goes away. Is that true?
Yep. It doesn't go away. But you learn to identify it quicker and you learn to manage it better. But the annoying thing is, the only way to manage it is to go through it, and you can't be better at managing fear without putting yourself in those situations, which sucks.
But then I guess what's on the other side is pretty nice.
I think that's what drives me, the feeling on the other side, because every time I'm at the top of the start hill for a final, it's scary, there's a lot of pressure, there's fear from a lot of different factors. It's so uncomfortable when it's just like, oh, you just want it to go away. And I feel like a lot of people don't talk about that discomfort very often, which I feel like, because when I felt that, I was like, wow, I've never felt this before, and feel like no one feels this. I'm probably the only one who's feeling so uncomfortable doing this. But then when you do your best in that situation, despite how you feel, and get to the other side, that's when it feels incredible, because you know how you felt and you know how hard it was, and you still did the thing, and you're on the other side, and whether it was a great result or whatever it was, you still did the thing that was scary. And that is what drives me in those situations.
Did you develop a certain routine in order to feel this control? Do you have like a certain self-talk maybe before going down the ramp?
Yeah, it's a lot to do with trust. Just going back to trusting in myself, because when I'm overthinking and doubting, I'm not trusting. When I'm trusting, I'm not doubting and overthinking. So that's pretty much, it sounds so simple. Just trust. Just trust. But pretty much like that's what it comes down to. And that trust is developed from training and knowing that you've done the training, knowing that you've done everything you need to do. I feel like I'm in this learning phase of coming up with my race days routine still, but it's definitely revolved around trusting myself.
Learning about the new Saya, the new identity really that you created for yourself on that bike as an athlete. What role does Kai play?
It sucks that we don't get to spend as much time together as before because he's at home, he's doing his thing, he's very, very busy with everything that he's doing. I don't know how he does it. And I'm usually away and training and racing. But I think it's really cool that he is still able to root for me and cheer me on. He's a full supporter of what I'm doing. He sends me text messages on race week, and I get to be there for him for his rowing journey, and he gets to send me videos of how he's going. And I can't imagine how hard it will be to be one of the best in your sport to suddenly have to start a brand new sport from the very, very bottom. I'd like to think that we inspire each other. I hope that what I'm doing with my BMX is inspiring him to keep going, and he's a living and breathing inspiration for me since I was a little girl. So he's still the same, and he's just defeated all the odds to be where he is now, and it's truly inspiring. So I hope that after this year we get to spend a bit more time together since everything's will be like settled down after the games, and kind of rebuild this relationship.
It really does seem like you're on a similar path, really. Different types of recovery, but still such an inspiring development that you're both going through.
It's cool. Like I often wondered, like it would be so cool to have this conversation of things that I'm learning about BMX and the mental side and what has helped me win in BMX. And there is this part of me that I really want to talk to the pre-accident Kai about all this stuff, because I remember we talk about mental side of racing a lot when we were racing together. He struggled a little bit, definitely on race days, to be able to perform to the best of his abilities. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could have this conversation with him and teach him about all the things that I'd learnt to help him back then. But these are the things that I can teach him now that might help with his rowing.
Speaking so much about this whole mental development, have you done all of this by yourself with your journal by yourself, or have you actually had like a coach or turned to someone to maybe inspire you, give you tools, support you on that journey?
So many people, so many people. Just before I went to the Swiss Concussion Center, I went to the APC, the Athlete Performance Center in Austria, where I was able to work with 2 psychologists there. Then when I went back to Australia, I started working with another one. So I was with 3 psychologists at the same time, just telling everyone my problems. And then I was just trying to grab any new information that they will have on a different perspective. And now I'm working with someone else who has really helped me, with my mindset and my approach to racing and training, and the outlook for my whole career and whole BMX, what I do in BMX, which has been really helpful, and that has really accelerated in 2023 season, I think.
Were there certain tools or certain situations that stand out for you until today that really are, a helpful thing that maybe I could use in my day-to-day life, or something that was such a game changer for you?
It was a change in belief. I think that, so I'm currently only working with one person now, and he helped me kind of change beliefs and turn them into things that are useful. For example, in 2022, I was convinced and I had this belief that if I race, I will crash. And that was just a belief that, I was running on, and I was racing with fear. And there is, like, obviously I'm going to be racing with fear if that is my belief. But it was changing that belief to, if I do my best, I will win. When I race, I will win. And that took, you know, a lot of steps and process to get to that point, but it was just the changing of the belief was, yeah, the game changer. And I've learnt how powerful the mind is, how powerful it can be to your detriment, and how powerful it could be to your advantage.
So how did you correct that for you, and how did you reshape it? Because that's not a simple thing to do.
I think for me it was a lot of, the journaling as well, but then more, rather than just ramping on about how I'm feeling and all the negative feelings that I'm feeling, I would start to write in past tense of what I want to feel. So, for example, if I'm writing about racing the next day, I would write in past tense of how I want the next day to go. So, for
Oh,
example, I felt really
it
good
already
at the
happened.
BMX track. I was confident. I felt confident. It was great. I had fun. I had a smile on my face. And it kind of tricks your brain into thinking that that has happened already. And it doesn't work the first time. It doesn't work the first time, but yeah, it's just a process. And it's just whatever that gets you past that first initial, to break the ice the first time, and whatever's going to get you there, that's your first piece of evidence that you can draw upon. And it's just building evidence on top of that, and that's just through experience and through doing the thing that is scary. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
Maybe you can share with us where you are in the current process of preparing for, this huge event of your dreams, really, that you really want to succeed in. And yeah, how you are really seeing that, maybe as a chapter that you're closing then, or just a chapter that's reopening.
I'm actually trying not to put too much of a story around these games this year. There's still a few months to go. I still have another World Cup coming up in a couple of weeks, and then a World Champs in a month or so. And then those are the two races to get through, and then it's about 10 weeks before the games. So I'm just seeing these next couple of races as practice and as an opportunity to kind of just fine tune what I'll be doing at the games. And yeah, it's hard. Like, I don't know, there is no book on how to approach the games, the biggest race of your life. And I've also never been in this position where I am winning, and I'm currently leading the World Cup season series still. So, I've never been in a good position, because last year, or the last games, I didn't race the whole year before the games because of COVID and I couldn't travel outside Australia. So basically there was just training by myself for however long, and then it was like bam, Olympic Games. So yeah, it was definitely so huge, and I know that it's going to be a big event again. There's going to be things that I'm not going to expect to happen, and yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much up until this point, and I might not until the week of. But yeah, I think it's just going to be another learning curve. Whatever happens, I'll learn from it. It's just a part of my journey. I don't see it as a start or an end. It's just a part of my journey, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Thank you so much for opening up the way you did, for all these little details that you shared. Those are really the things I think that make the difference, or can make a difference for anyone who's listening. So we appreciate you so much. Thank you, and all the best for everything that's ahead.
Thanks so much.
So thanks again to Saya in this incredibly open and cool conversation. I really appreciated how she was so open about her mental ups and downs, and how she was so honest about everything that she's had to contend with. Her resilience and her taking back control was really so powerful for me to listen to, and we're definitely wishing her all the best of luck for the future. Now, I'll be back on Thursday together with York to reflect on mine and Saya's conversation, to see how we can apply her mental tools and tactic to our own lives. And you guys already know Mindset Win is all about interacting, so we would love to hear from you. Please reach out and share your stories and how these episodes are motivating you to get better. You can either do that by leaving a comment or review wherever you're watching or listening, or by shooting us an email on mindsetwin@rebel.com. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe as well to never miss a thing, and do check out our brand new Mindset Win YouTube channel, where you can watch the full conversation as well. That was it from my side today. See you back on Thursday.